My name is Meredith Hale. I am 38 years old, and the night my brother introduced me to a ballroom full of strangers as the woman who never amounted to anything, the most powerful man in the room stood up and asked me why my name was buried inside software his company was about to buy for $42 million. My brother Liam stopped smiling, my mother lowered her champagne glass, and my father stared at me as if I had somehow broken a rule we had all been following for 20 years. I had almost skipped the wedding. Liam had spent most of our lives making sure everyone understood which one of us was successful. He had the company, the interviews, the expensive car, and now the beautiful wedding at a lakeside resort outside Chicago. I had a quiet job nobody in my family understood. That was how they described it. Just Meredith and her computers. What they did not know was that the systems I designed processed financial and medical transactions across 9 states. What they also did not know was that years earlier, when Liam was desperate to keep his first startup alive, I had helped him build something important, something he later claimed as his own. I had never fought him over it. That was my mistake. At the wedding reception, Liam placed one hand on my shoulder and laughed while introducing me to his new father-in-law, Richard Calloway. He told him I was the smart one who never figured out what to do with it. Richard did not laugh. He looked at my name tag, then at me, then back at Liam. His face changed. "Meredith Hale," he said. I nodded. He asked where I had worked in 2017. My stomach tightened. Before I could answer, Liam stepped between us and said it was ancient history. Richard ignored him. Then he pulled out his phone. Before I tell you what happened next, if you're enjoying this story so far, please take a second to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It truly helps this channel reach more people who love emotional family stories like these. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in her place? I'm curious to read your thoughts. Richard found what he was looking for. He turned the screen toward Liam. I could not see it from where I stood, but Liam could. The color disappeared from his face. My mother whispered his name. Richard looked at me again. This time, there was no confusion in his eyes, only recognition. Then he asked one question that made my brother grip the edge of the table. "Meredith, did you write the original architecture for North Star?" I did not answer Richard right away. For a moment, I was back in 2017, sitting at my kitchen table while Liam paced behind me and begged for help. That was how it had started. Not with theft, with trust. I was 30 then and working as a senior data systems architect. My job was difficult to explain at family dinners, which meant my family reduced it to something they understood. Meredith works with computers. Liam was different. He was charming, ambitious, and always building something people could see. My father called him an entrepreneur. My mother forwarded his interviews to everyone she knew. When people asked about me, she said I had a stable job. I learned not to correct anyone. Then Liam's second startup nearly collapsed. His developers had built a data platform that worked during demonstrations but failed under real transaction volume. Records duplicated, transfers disappeared. Every repair created another problem. One Friday night, Liam arrived at my apartment with his laptop. "You're the only person I trust with this," he said. I believed him. That was my first mistake. I spent weeks rebuilding the architecture beneath his system. I created new routing logic, recovery rules, and a verification layer that prevented duplicate transactions. I named the framework North Star. Liam loved it. His messages from those months were full of gratitude. "You saved us. I owe you everything." Then investors became interested. His language changed. My architecture became our architecture. Then Astron's architecture. Eventually, Liam began describing North Star publicly as something he had developed with his team. I confronted him once. He told me I had helped with technical problems, but had never been part of his company. That was technically true. So I let it go. But I kept everything. Emails, version histories, architecture diagrams, repository records. I kept them because my employer required disclosure of outside technical work, not because I expected to need them against my own brother. Years passed. Astron grew. Liam became the successful child. And somewhere along the way, my family stopped merely overlooking my career. They began treating it like proof that I had wasted my potential. Then Liam met Carolyn Calloway. Her father Richard had built Calloway Capital after making his fortune in technology. 3 months before the wedding, I was having coffee with Liam when a notification appeared on his phone. Calloway Capital due diligence. He quickly turned the screen face down. I smiled. Richard is investing in Asteron? Maybe. That's huge. It will be. Then Liam asked something strange. Do you still have those old North Star files? I looked at him. Probably. You should delete them. I thought he was joking. Why? They're obsolete. Then why do you care? For the first time, Liam did not have a quick answer. He just smiled and changed the subject. That night, I opened my archive. The files were still there. So were Liam's old emails. One stopped me cold. He had written it after I finished the first stable North Star build. I don't know how I'm going to explain to investors that my sister solved what my whole team couldn't. I read that sentence several times. Then I noticed something I had forgotten. Attached to the email was an early architecture document. It contained my name, my employee disclosure reference, and the creation date. I closed the laptop. I still wasn't planning to confront him. Then my mother called 2 days before the wedding. She asked me not to discuss Asteron's early years with Richard or anyone from his investment firm. I asked why. Her voice became careful. Liam says you sometimes remember your contribution differently than everyone else. That hurt more than I expected. Everyone else? She went quiet. Then she said the sentence I had heard in different forms my entire life. Please don't make this about you. At the rehearsal dinner, Liam found me alone near the terrace. Mom talked to you? Yes. Good. I asked him what he was afraid I might say. His expression changed. Nothing, if you're sensible. I stared at him. He leaned closer. You helped me years ago, that's all. Don't embarrass yourself by pretending you built Asteron. I had never claimed that I did, and suddenly I understood. Liam was not worried that I would exaggerate. He was worried that someone would ask the right question. The next evening, Richard did. After Liam introduced me as his unsuccessful older sister, Richard looked at my name and froze. Meredith Hale. Then he asked whether I had designed North Star. Liam immediately answered for me. She did some debugging. Richard kept his eyes on mine. Is that true? For years, I had protected my brother from uncomfortable truths. This time, I didn't. No. The word came out quietly. I designed the original North Star transaction architecture. Liam's smile vanished. Richard asked whether I could prove it. Yes. That was when everything changed. Richard explained that Calloway Capital had been conducting technical due diligence on Asteron. Their analysts had found something unusual inside archived North Star components. My initials. MH. Then he mentioned an old Meridian disclosure number embedded in one of the development records. I felt my stomach tighten. That number existed only in my original documentation, which meant someone had copied more than my ideas. They had copied my files. Richard asked one final question. Did you ever authorize Asteron to claim exclusive ownership of North Star? No. Liam stepped between us. This is my wedding. We're not doing this here. Richard nodded. You're right. Then he looked at me. But Meredith and I need to talk tomorrow. Liam went pale, not angry, afraid. And that was when I realized there was something he knew that I still didn't. Richard did not contact me until 10 the next morning. By then, I had slept for less than 3 hours. His message contained an address and one question. Can you bring the original North Star records? I almost said no. Caroline had married my brother less than 24 hours earlier. Whatever Richard had discovered could damage her marriage before she had even unpacked her wedding dress. But Liam had asked me to delete those files. My mother had tried to silence me. And somebody had copied documentation that should never have existed inside Asteron's records. I took my laptop. Richard was waiting in a private conference room at Calloway Capital. Caroline was not there. Neither was Liam. 2 other people sat beside him. One was an attorney named Rebecca Shaw. The other was Daniel Cho, the technical advisor leading Asteron's due diligence. Richard came straight to the point. Calloway Capital was considering acquiring a significant stake in Asteron. The investment depended heavily on North Star. According to documents Liam had provided, Asteron owned the technology completely. No outside claims, no disputed authorship, no licensing problems. Daniel opened his laptop. Then he showed me an architecture diagram submitted during due diligence. I recognized it immediately, not because the design was similar, because I had drawn it. The boxes had been recolored. The company logo had been added. My name was gone, but one tiny mistake remained. In the lower corner was the code MHC-17. My internal filing label. I leaned closer. "Where did you get this?" "From Asteron," Daniel said. I opened my archive. My original appeared beside theirs. Same structure, same labels, same unusual abbreviation I had invented for interrupted transaction recovery. Even the spacing was identical. Rebecca asked whether I had ever transferred ownership. No. Licensed it? No. Been paid? No. Did you sign anything? Nothing. Richard leaned back. Then how did Asteron obtain these files? I knew the answer. Liam had access. During those early months, I had shared working documents with him so his developers could implement the architecture. But that still did not explain why he had recently certified that the work had originated entirely inside Asteron. Daniel showed me another document. This one was newer. An intellectual property schedule signed 8 months earlier. I read the certification at the bottom. Liam's signature was there. He had declared that no person outside Asteron had contributed material intellectual property to North Star. 8 months earlier, not 9 years ago when memories could become convenient. 8 months. My brother had known exactly what he was signing. I asked Richard why his team had suspected anything. Daniel answered. North Star had changed over the years, but some of its oldest components contained patterns that did not match Asteron's documented development history. Then they found MH, then Meridian. They searched professional records. That led to me. The room became very quiet. All those years my family had treated my work as invisible. Now invisibility had become evidence. But Richard had one more problem. Asteron was claiming something else. That Liam had personally designed North Star before I ever became involved. I almost laughed. That's impossible. Can you prove it? I thought about the archive. Maybe. I searched until I found the earliest repository export, then another. Dates, commit histories, test failures. My first redesign. The sequence was clear. Before my involvement, North Star did not exist. There was only Asteron's unstable prototype under a different internal name. North Star appeared after I rebuilt the transaction layer. Daniel compared the records. His expression changed. This is significant. Richard asked me to send nothing yet. He wanted his attorneys to preserve the existing evidence first. That frightened me more than anger would have. This was no longer a family argument about credit. It was due diligence, contracts, representations, millions of dollars. I asked what happened now. Richard folded his hands. Now we give Liam an opportunity to explain. He called him. My brother arrived 40 minutes later. When Liam walked into the conference room and saw me, he stopped. For 1 second, neither of us spoke. Then he looked at my laptop. You brought the files. It was not a question. Richard asked Liam to sit. Daniel placed the 2 architecture diagrams on the screen. Original and Asteron's version. Liam barely looked at them. He said Meredith had helped during development, and everyone knew that. Rebecca slid the signed ownership certification across the table. Then why did you disclose no outside contributor? Liam's jaw tightened. Because she wasn't a contributor in the legal sense. I asked what that meant. He finally looked at me. You gave it to me. No, I said. I helped you. Same thing. It wasn't. His voice sharpened. Meredith, you weren't building a company. I was. You wrote some architecture because I asked you to help your brother. Richard interrupted him. That is not how intellectual property ownership works. Liam turned toward him. This is a family misunderstanding. Richard's expression remained calm. You represented it to my fund as a legal certainty. Silence. Then Liam made his first real mistake. He looked at me and said I had already agreed not to claim anything. I felt cold. When? He hesitated. Years ago. Show me. Another pause. Rebecca noticed it too. Do you have an agreement? Liam rubbed his forehead. There was paperwork. I had never signed paperwork. I said so. He insisted I had. Richard asked his attorney to request the document from Asteron's counsel immediately. 20 minutes later, it arrived. Rebecca opened the file. I saw my name at the top, Meredith Hale. My address from 2017. A paragraph stating that I transferred all rights connected to North Star to Asteron Systems. And at the bottom was a signature. Mine. Except it wasn't. The room seemed to shrink around me. I stared at it. I didn't sign this. Liam said nothing. Rebecca asked if I was certain. Absolutely. Then I noticed the date. April 11th, 2017. Suddenly, I knew I could prove it. I opened my employment archive and found the Meridian disclosure record. The original North Star disclosure had been filed April 19th, 8 days after I had supposedly transferred rights to something that, according to the document, already existed under a company name Liam had not started using until June. Daniel checked the corporate records. Then he looked at Richard. She's right. Asteron Systems wasn't registered under that name on April 11th. Nobody spoke. Liam's face had changed. The confidence was gone. Richard asked him one simple question. Where did this agreement come from? Liam stared at the table. I wanted him to answer. Part of me still wanted an explanation that would make everything smaller. A clerical error, a careless attorney, anything. Then Liam finally spoke. Dad handled the paperwork. I thought I had misheard him. What? Liam looked at me. Dad handled it. My father. The man who had spent years telling me that Liam was the one who understood business. The man who had framed my brother's magazine cover in his office. The man who had barely asked what I actually did for a living. Richard watched me carefully. I reached for my phone. My hands were shaking now. I called Dad. He answered on the third ring. Meredith? I asked him about the agreement. There was a long silence. Too long. Then my father said something that made every old family memory rearrange itself in my mind. I was wondering when somebody would finally find that. I put my phone on speaker. Dad went quiet when I asked about the agreement. Then he said the one thing I had not expected. I signed it. The conference room disappeared around me. Richard stopped writing. Rebecca looked up. Even Liam seemed uncomfortable. I asked Dad why. He said Liam's first serious investor had discovered that North Star had been created partly outside the company. Without clear ownership, the investment would disappear. Dad had convinced himself that I would never object. You were helping your brother, he said. I thought that was what you wanted. Helping him was what I wanted. Giving him my work was not. Dad said he had planned to tell me after the investment closed. He never did. Then I heard my mother in the background. She knew. Not at first, she insisted. But she had known for years. My chest tightened. So when you told me not to discuss North Star at the wedding, you weren't protecting me from embarrassing myself. Neither of them answered. You were protecting Liam. Mom began to cry. I ended the call. There was only one person left. I looked at my brother. When did you find out Dad forged my signature? Liam stared at the table. 5 years ago. 5 years. That mattered more than what Dad had done in panic back in 2017. Liam had discovered the truth and kept using the document. He had raised money with it, signed contracts around it. And only 8 months earlier, he had personally certified to Callaway Capital that Asteron owned North Star without dispute. Richard asked him why. Liam finally looked at me. Because by then there was no clean way out. There had been, I said. You could have called me. He laughed bitterly and said, What? Sorry, Meredith. The company everyone thinks I built depends on something you designed. There it was. Not money, not survival. Pride. Rebecca asked whether I wanted to formally dispute the assignment. Liam turned toward me. Don't do this. I almost smiled at how familiar those words sounded. For years, every family conflict ended with me being asked not to do something. Don't argue. Don't embarrass him. Don't make Mom upset. Don't make it about you. This time, I said yes. Rebecca sent formal notice to Asteron's counsel that afternoon. Callaway Capital suspended its investment review. Asteron's board opened an independent investigation. I posted nothing publicly. I called no reporters. I wanted the record corrected. That was enough. Then Caroline called me. She had learned everything from Liam. At least she thought she had. She asked one question. Why did Liam insist so strongly that you come to the wedding? I didn't know. Caroline did. 6 weeks earlier, Richard's due diligence team had asked Liam about the initials MH, found inside old North Star files. Liam had identified me as an informal advisor with no ownership interest. Then he had written something else. My sister remains close to me and will be attending my wedding. Richard is welcome to meet her. I felt sick. Suddenly, the wedding made sense. Liam had needed me there, smiling, quiet, standing beside him. My presence was supposed to prove there was no dispute, and his joke about me being the family failure had served another purpose. It told Richard exactly how seriously he should take me. The next morning, Callaway Capital sent the email to my attorney. There it was, in Liam's own words. Documented. I met my parents and Liam that evening. No lawyers, no Richard. Just the four of us around the dining table, where I had spent years listening to everyone celebrate my brother. I placed the email beside the false agreement. Mom looked away. Dad whispered that he was sorry. Liam said nothing. I asked him one question. If my contribution was so small, why did you spend years hiding it? He started explaining how he had built the company, found customers, hired employees, taken risks. I let him finish. Then I nodded. You did build the company. He looked surprised. I never wanted Astron, Liam. I pointed to the agreement. I wanted you not to steal the part I built. He had no answer. 3 weeks later, Astron's independent review confirmed that North Star incorporated architecture I had created and that the assignment agreement was invalid. The board wanted a settlement. So did I. 87 employees had done nothing wrong. Destroying Astron would not restore anything to me. My attorney proposed a license. Astron could keep using North Star. My contribution would be formally recognized. The company's disclosures would be corrected, and I would receive compensation based on an independent valuation of the technology. The board accepted the framework. Liam fought it until his own attorneys told him the alternative was worse. Callaway Capital agreed to reconsider its investment after the ownership issue was resolved. For the first time, there seemed to be a path out. Then came Liam's board hearing. The independent report was placed in front of us. It confirmed that Liam had knowingly relied on the false agreement after learning my signature was not genuine. The chairman asked whether he had anything to say. Liam looked at me through the conference room camera, then at Dad. His expression changed. You all think that agreement was just about North Star, he said. Rebecca frowned. What does that mean? Dad suddenly stood. Liam, don't. My brother ignored him. He looked straight at me. Ask Dad where the first investment money went. I felt the room go cold. Dad had told me he forged my signature to save Liam's company. But Liam was saying the document had protected something else, something my father still had not told me. Dad closed his eyes, and Liam said quietly, Tell her what you really used her signature for. Dad asked for the meeting to stop. Nobody moved. I looked at him. Where did the money go? He sat down again. The first investment in Liam's company had been $2 million. I knew that much. What I did not know was that shortly before the money arrived, my father's flooring business had been close to collapse. He had personally guaranteed several loans. One bad commercial project had left him with unpaid invoices, tax debt, and a credit line the bank was preparing to call. He needed $400,000. Fast. Liam had it. Or rather, his company did. Dad admitted that after the investment closed, Liam transferred money through a consulting arrangement with my father's business. The invoices described technical and facilities services that had never actually been performed. My stomach turned. Richard asked what this had to do with North Star. Dad looked at me. Everything. The investor had refused to release funds until Liam proved Astron controlled its core technology. My false assignment agreement had solved that problem. My signature had not only protected Liam's claim to North Star, it had helped unlock the money that saved Dad's business. Suddenly, years of silence made sense. Dad had protected Liam because exposing him meant exposing himself. Mom had protected Dad. And Liam had learned that as long as everyone had something to lose, nobody would tell me the truth. I looked at my father. Was any of that money mine? No. Did you ever intend to tell me? His eyes dropped. No. That answer hurt. But it also freed me from something. There was nothing left to investigate emotionally. No hidden noble reason. No misunderstanding waiting to make everything acceptable. They had made choices. Now I could make mine. The board's attorneys took over from there. I did not try to punish my father. I did not need to. The questionable transfer became part of Asteron's independent financial review, and Dad had to provide records explaining exactly what had happened. Liam resigned as CEO before the board could vote on removing him. He remained a shareholder, but he lost operational control of the company he had spent years presenting as entirely his creation. Callaway Capital did not proceed with the original deal. Instead, months later, Richard's firm joined a smaller investment, led by another fund, after Asteron replaced its leadership and corrected its intellectual property disclosures. The company survived. Most of the employees kept their jobs. That mattered to me more than Liam ever understood. My settlement took almost 5 months. Asteron received a long-term license to continue using the portions of North Star derived from my architecture. The company formally acknowledged my original contribution in its technical ownership records. I received compensation based on an independent valuation. It was more money than I had ever had at one time. But the strangest moment came when my attorney showed me the final agreement. There it was, my name, Meredith Hale, not hidden in old code, not removed from a diagram, not replaced by somebody else's story. Mine. I signed it myself. That mattered more than the amount beside it. My relationship with my parents changed permanently. For the first few months, Mom called constantly. She wanted the family repaired. That was the phrase she used. I told her families were not repaired by pretending the damage had never happened. Dad apologized without defending himself for the first time almost 6 months later. I accepted the apology. I did not restore the old relationship. Those were two different things. I stopped attending gatherings out of obligation. I stopped answering questions I did not want to answer. And I stopped confusing forgiveness with access. Liam and Caroline separated. I stayed out of it. Caroline eventually sent me a short message saying she was sorry I had been used as part of the due diligence performance at her wedding. I told her she had nothing to apologize for. She had been deceived too. Liam contacted me once after the settlement. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. He looked different without the expensive suit and founder confidence. For several minutes, we talked about nothing important. Then he asked whether I was happy. I thought about it. Yes. He looked toward the window. Was it worth destroying our family? That question would once have filled me with guilt. It did not anymore. I didn't destroy it, Liam. He looked at me. I just stopped holding it together by lying about what happened. He said nothing. Before leaving, he admitted something I never expected. He said he had spent years afraid that if people knew how important my early work had been, they would realize he was not the genius everyone believed he was. I told him the truth. I never thought you were a fraud because you needed my help. His eyes lifted. I thought you were my brother. That was enough. He looked down again. We did not hug when we left. Maybe someday our relationship will become something different. Maybe it will not. I no longer need that answer. A year after the wedding, I left Meridian. Not because Richard offered me a job. He did not. And I am grateful for that. For once, my next chapter did not come from somebody rescuing me. I used part of the settlement to start a small systems consultancy with 2 former colleagues. We do the kind of work I have always loved. Quiet infrastructure, complicated problems, systems nobody notices when they work correctly. On the wall beside my desk is one framed document, not an award, not an article. The first page of my original 2017 North Star architecture record. My name is printed at the bottom. Sometimes clients recognize it. Most do not. That no longer bothers me. For years, I thought being overlooked was the price of keeping peace. I thought being good meant asking for less. Taking up less space, correcting nobody, keeping uncomfortable truths to myself. I was wrong. There is a difference between being kind and making yourself invisible. There is a difference between helping someone and surrendering ownership of what you created. And there is a difference between forgiveness and returning to the place where people learned they could erase you. My family called me the failure because my success did not look impressive to them. Then one man recognized my work at a wedding, and for a while I thought that was the moment everything changed. It wasn't. Richard, recognizing me, only opened the door. The real change happened when I finally recognized myself. Thank you for staying with me until the end of my story. If it touched your heart, please subscribe because I share a brand new family story here every single day. And if you're not ready to leave yet, open the next story on your screen. I have a feeling it will stay with you just as long.